I've been responsible and involved with management and leadership development for a long, long time. So what I'm going to share with you are some of the lessons that we've learned over the past 24 years in going and creating leadership programs for companies and learning some valuable lessons. What works, what doesn't work. And so it's really, I think, challenging. If anybody's designed and developed a leader, how many of you have designed and developed a leadership program? How many of you have designed and developed anything? Yes? These tips will be valuable to you as well, because I think a lot of the things that we've learned apply not only to leadership training, but also to other types of training. So in addition to working with companies, we've had the pleasure of developing training for 60 leadership gurus and leaders themselves, like Jack Welch or Sir Richard Branson. And I'm listing a couple of up here just to give you an idea that there are so many things that have formed our philosophy in terms of coming up with effective leadership development. So hopefully I've given you a little bit of my background that paints some credibility, okay? Plus I'm old. I mentioned today is my birthday. 59 years, you don't get to be 59 without doing one or two things right. So hopefully these will resonate with you. We wanted to give you a handout, and the handout is going to be the list of things that I'm going to be going through. I'll go through some of them very quickly because 23 tips, it's going to be hard to do that in 40 minutes. And so the handout is intended to be your takeaway. There's also another white paper that I'm just going to reference right now, and I'll mention it at the very end. If you want more detail about each one of these, we have a white paper that's available for free just for downloading. We just didn't want to waste trees by printing them off here. Okay, so why should we care about stickiness? Figures vary, but 2014 figures from Burson Report indicate that this is US dollars, $45.5 billion is spent on leadership training annually. $45.5 billion. But if you ask employees, how's my leader doing? Are they involving me in decisions? Are they getting me engaged? Are they soliciting my input? Are they developing me? And the answer to all those questions is not enough, right? So to the tune of like 49% say that their managers sometimes or never ask for their ideas. The bottom one, 45% say that their managers never, or sometimes or never get feedback from their managers about their performance. Think about this. If we were to ask your employees, are you getting feedback from your manager? And half of them said no. You got half of your workforce now kind of unclear about what they're supposed to be doing. So that's why we care about making sure that leadership training sticks. If we're spending $45.5 billion, and this is globally, then what are we getting for our return? 50%? That's not very good. So the question is, how do we make sure leadership training sticks? So if you do the math on this, and you've got $45.5 million times 50%, you're going to end up with $22 billion that are going down the tubes annually. Okay? Annually, you were wasting that kind of money. Businesses can't run like that. So what do we do in order to make sure our leadership training sticks? There are 3 areas, and they've been divided out for you here. Okay? So you've got a list of 23 reasons, but the 3 areas that we're going to be looking at are going to be effective executive support and organizational buy-in. One of the best ways to make sure that your leadership training stick or any training stick is to make sure that it's got executive sponsorship, yes? And I'll be telling you things that you go, yeah, Terry, I know that. But as I go through the list, what I'd really ask you to do, take your pen out. This isn't a pen, but it's all I've got. Take your pen out, and out of the first set of 4, for example, which one is going to be the most important for you? Okay? Which one is going to have the biggest impact? If you were to go back today and do one thing, what would that one thing be? Okay, in addition to that, we've got program design. What the program looks like is very important. And I don't mean looks in terms of like the formatting or the, whether or not you've got graphics. I mean, how is it segmented? Is it a journey? Do you have blended approaches? Okay, we talked a lot in this conference about mobile learning. Do you have easy access to information? And then the final area is around skill application. And I think oftentimes we let this go for granted, and we can't. If you want your people, your leaders, to apply what they learned, you must do it within the context of our learning. You must do it as part of the training. It can't be, oh, I hope they can do it. So we'll talk some about that. I've got a couple of activities. Hopefully we'll have some fun. It is my birthday, right? Okay, so the first set we're going to be looking at is going to be around executive support and organizational buy-in. Number one, making sure that you get a senior level champion. We have had many, many successes over the past 24 years, and we have had one glaring, dismal failure. And that glaring, dismal failure, and I'm not going to tell you who it is, was because we assumed that the executives bought in, and they didn't. When we came to roll out the program, we found out that the executives across the board didn't really know about the program. We hadn't positioned the value. And so number one, I think if you were to do anything to increase the effectiveness, the stickiness of your leadership development program, is find that executive level sponsor and get buy-in from that person. And it doesn't have to be the CEO. For leadership, it could be the CFO. It could be the financial vice president. You know, somebody that loves and is passionate about leadership. Find that person and make that person responsible for your program. Second thing is making sure that we align with organizational goals. How many of you have organizational goals? Raise your feather. Raise your feather. Yes? Okay. How many of you have new organizational goals every year? How many of your leadership development programs change every year to match those organizational goals? Fantastic. What I often see is that, no, we've got a curriculum, we developed it back in 1975, it seems to be okay. If it's not changing with organizational goals, if your program isn't supporting organizational goals, then you're missing an opportunity. So go back and examine, are we actually trying to achieve organizational goals as a result of the leadership? Next, get broad-based buy-in. So we've got executive support. I already talked about that. It's not enough. You need to make sure that you're getting support throughout the organization, mid-level managers and frontline managers. Make this their program. Make this about them. Give them an opportunity for input. You'll get some great insights, but the other thing that you're going to get that's most important is buy-in. So when they show up for your training, when they show up for your program, when they participate in your journey, they look at it and they go, I helped make this. This is mine. And the final thing is making sure that that executives, that senior leaders can walk the walk and talk the talk. And I don't mean give them a 1-hour overview PowerPoint of your journey. Get them involved in the actual application of the training. Get them to practice the models. One of the most rewarding things I remember, we have a 2-track program, and one of the tracks is for executives, right? And so we try to send them through as early as possible, hopefully before the core track goes through. And I remember in the core track, one of the participants said, "Oh, my manager's been doing that for me for the past 3 months. I didn't know what that was." So if you can train your leaders to actually walk the walk and talk the talk, you're going to be better off. So pause here, look down at your sheet, and I'm going to ask you, which of these 4 items, if you were to work on one of those, which of those 4 would have the most impact for your program? Next, we're going to be looking quickly at program design, and I'll skip through most of these. Okay? There's more information in the white paper that I talked about. There are many elements that make up for an effective design of a leadership program. Making it simple. This is one that I firmly believe is overlooked too much, too often. So when I talk about making it simple, oftentimes we get into theoretical discussions about what coaching should look like, for example. Coaches need to be great listeners. Coaches need to be asking good questions. Coaches need to be empathetic. Coaches need to... We all know that. That's not new. Why don't people coach then? I mean, if we all know this, why don't we coach? Sometimes it's given the words. In the companies that we work with, oftentimes we find that managers are simply missing the words to say, or in our case, the questions to ask. And so what we have is we've got 3 questions. We tell our managers, if you want to be an effective coach, remember these 3 questions. I know that you're working on your meeting management skills. How's that been going since the last time we got together? What's been going well? Tell me about it. And the third question is, if you were to do this over again, if you were to repeat the last week, is there anything that you would have done differently to manage meetings more effectively? That's it. When people walk away from that kind of training with a very simple approach, they're able to apply it. Make it relevant, very relevant. Okay? So translate the models into what they can use. We deal with clients across industries. We have a client who picks up trash. Coaching looks different when you're picking up trash than in a software engineering environment. So take the model that you have, but make it translated. Everybody in this room here, I am sure, has at least 3 different functions within their organization. You've got some sort of like central services. You've got marketing, sales. You've got corporate shared services. Everybody's got some sort of customer service business unit. Everybody's got some sort of call it field services, right, where you're interfacing, installing, doing something like that. What coaching looks like in each one of those functions is going to be different, so make it relevant. When in doubt, leave it out. Anybody can create a leadership development program. It's not so tough. We can do it. Everybody can do it. The challenge is what to keep out. What do you keep out of that program? Because the more you put in, it's going to take away from the rest of the program. Face-to-face or virtual or self-paced or mobile or whatever, you name it. Select judiciously. Why are you choosing that technique? Because in often cases, we select a technique because it's the latest buzzword. Sometimes you have programs that require face-to-face. Use it. Embedded engaging activities. Activities that help shift perspective, hone skill, build confidence, and create mastery. I'm going to take you through one here that shifts a perspective. 360 survey. What do you see? What is that? Louder? Some people see a horse. Okay. Shifting your perspective. Some people saw a frog. 360 survey. Oftentimes, some of the most valuable tools we get are a shift in our own perspective. Use video to illustrate skills in action. There's no reason why we can't do that in today's technology. It's so easy to create. Select your trainers carefully. Okay? In a leadership development program, there's nothing more important than your trainers. And make sure that you train them and support them and ensure a positive experience for participants. So where do you see your greatest opportunity? Look at that list. Is there one that stands out for you and your organization? If you were to do one thing, is it simplification? Is it using video? Skills application and ongoing support. This is where I want to spend the bulk of the time. Make sure that your leadership training is a journey. Okay? It's not an event. We all know that. But how are you creating that? How are you sustaining that? How are you making it scalable? So by creating an event, what you typically end up with is people who come to a training, they get out of class or get out of work for a little bit and they go back to the real job. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a blended approach that begins with some skills development, application, reinforcement. The other thing I want to talk about is practicing the skills in training. Okay, you haven't had a chance to practice any of what I've talked about right now, right? So it's your turn. You ready? Ready to practice? I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. This is the interactive portion of the exercise, okay, of the presentation. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to cross your arms, just like you're, tired, bored, standing. Okay. So if you look down right now, you'll notice that one of the arms is over the top of the other arm. Yes? Yep. Okay. We'll call this the normal way. I'm going to ask you to recross your arms now, but recross them so the other arm is over the top. Go ahead, take your time. We'll wait for you. I got time on the clock here. So, okay. So it feels weird, right? Is it wrong? Is it wrong? Is this? No, it isn't wrong. No, it's just different, right? So we'll call this we'll call this the new way, right? I'm going to ask you to put your arms down at your side and recross them that new way again, the new way. You should be good at this. We did this already. Okay? Put them down at your side and recross them the new way again. Still struggling, okay? We need some more practice. Down at your side, the new way. Down at your side, the new way. Down at your side. It's no different. Thank you. You can sit down. It's no different in our leadership training. If we're going to ask them to take on the skill of coaching Coaching, part of it is muscle memory. Part of it is feeling confident that we can do this. And so if you don't build in the practice, and that's why I said earlier, make sure that your leadership development programs are focused so that they don't cover everything. It's easy to build a program that includes everything, but if you include more content, you pull out the application. You build in more content, you pull out the practice. You won't sustain. Build in transfer at each module. And when I say transfer, I mean more than transfer. I mean application. One of the things that we do in our program, and I'm sure that you do many of the same things, okay, so I'm not saying, oh, this is the greatest. It's just that we've learned that if at the end of a module, if you can't get a leader to write down how they are going to use that with their people on the job tomorrow, and they can't name the 2 people that they're going to coach and what they're going to coach them on, then you've missed an opportunity. So at the end of each one of your modules, make sure that you give an opportunity for people to think, to pause. How am I going to use that with my team tomorrow? Who am I going to give feedback to tomorrow? Who am I going to catch doing something right tomorrow? It's only then, when they start making that transfer, that they're able to then take it out to the job. Provide multiple levels of support. Web-based training is a great reinforcer. Virtual instructor-led training is a great reinforcer. Buddy systems within a cohort is a good support system. Having a web tool where people can share information, what's working, using other types of mobile services, right? So making sure that you provide the multiple levels of support. And don't forget that you are part of that support. We in training sometimes create things, we deliver things, and then they're left on their own. Part of our job, a huge part of our job, I would suggest, is making sure that we provided that level of support. Create regular touch points. So if this is truly a journey, how often are we going to be getting together? Is it once a month? Is it once a week? And how are we going to be getting together, and why? Sharing challenges, sharing successes, articulating tips and techniques. We had heard in a couple of different sessions this morning talking about how learners, right, our employees should be able to create content. This is a perfect area, a perfect opportunity for them to create content. How have you applied the feedback model? How have you connected with your employees? What techniques are you using best? Getting them to share. Innovative tools. Sometimes the innovative tools comes in the form of a mobile app, right? So we've got a mobile app that supports one of the modules that we train on analyzing performance. But it doesn't necessarily need to be that. Sometimes having application tools, like we call a management action plan, how are you going to apply this back on the job, is innovative. You know, getting people to actually use the skills, use the techniques. Leveraging the models. You have great stuff in your leadership program. Phenomenal stuff. Your leaders love it. So why is it only there that our organization knows how to give feedback? Why is it only there that our organization learns how to coach? Take that coaching model and bring it over to customer service. Okay? Take that difficult conversation or analyzing performance and bring it over to HR. You know, cut it out and use a lunch and learn. What I'm suggesting here is that oftentimes organizations have multiple models of the same thing, when in fact what should happen is you have one model for coaching throughout the organization. Okay? So leverage those. Measure and celebrate success. Okay? Previous presenter just talked about the success, celebrating the 4-year anniversary of the organization, being able to do that. So make sure that you pause and recognize the successes that you've had. So I'm going to pause here. You know the drill. Look through the skills application and ongoing support piece. What is the one area that you think, if you were to do something differently with your leadership development program, would have the greatest impact? Now, I said that there are 3 areas. I lied to you. When you get to be 59 years old, you can lie to people and it's expected. There's actually another area, and it's so big and it's so important that it's got to stand alone. And that's number 23, rinse and repeat. In other words, leadership can't even though it's a journey, let's say you've created a program, it's a wonderful program. People go through the program. People aren't done. They need something else. They need something more. So making leadership as an ongoing activity is critical. And when you're doing that, it's really important that you look at the organizational goals. Look at the big picture. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to use these feathers, and here's how I'm going to ask you to do them. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, you're going to probably have to stand up for this. And if you got room to kind of spread out just a little bit, I'm going to ask you to do that as well. This is a voluntary activity, okay? So nobody's grading you on how well you do, although we are taking notes. And this is, in training, we always say this is our leadership test, right? So you've gone through the leadership program. If you can do this, great. You're blessed. You can go out and you're now certified as a leader. If you can't, there's a class for you tomorrow. Come back. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to balance watch me first. I'm going to ask you to try to balance the feather by looking at where the feather joins the tip of your finger. Okay, look down there. This is the detail, right? So look down there and try to balance the feather by looking there. Go ahead and try it. Oh, you're holding it. You can't do that. Kind of a challenge, isn't it? Yes? Okay, so if this is the detail, and we're concentrating on the detail, and I've given you 23 details, I'm going to ask you to come back to the big picture. The big picture is looking up here, so I'm going to ask you this time to try balancing the feather, but this time instead of looking down at where it joins your finger, I'm going to ask you to look at the top. Oh, look at you guys. Look at you guys. Look at you guys. Wow. So what's the difference? What's that? Okay, so if you look at the top, you're looking at the big picture. And when we're looking at leadership development, it's really important for us, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? It isn't about the specific modules. It isn't even about the specific models. It's about changing organizational culture, right? So keep your mind on the big picture. So as you rinse and repeat, come back to the big picture again. Okay, if anybody can do this on their nose, like I see somebody in the back there. Yes, very nice. Very nice. Okay. So you can sit down. You can take these feathers with you, by the way. I can't carry them back to the United States. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you got some good tips. I hope this is valuable to you. And I hope that you enjoy the feathers. Okay? Thank you. Oh, we have some time for Q&A. I actually misinterpreted the clock down here, so I ran through those tips pretty quickly. And again, you have access to the white paper. So, questions and answers.
Questions? Any questions, anybody?
Terry, first of all, congratulations for a lovely session. I think it was very insightful and very effective. I have a question. You know, in the first part, you talked about getting a senior level champion. Now, we all know that that's important. The organizational strategy is decided by the senior level, and they know what the organization is looking out for. So how is it that L&D gets them to champion? What can you give us some tips on how to convince them, influence them into getting on board?
How many of you are in sales? Okay, so there are some people that can give you some good tips. It's a great question. So the question is, how do you actually get buy-in from executives? And there's a variety of different ways, obviously. But first of all, getting their support in terms of, is there value in this program? Some of the things that we want to do in leadership development is articulate the value. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? So for example, one of the things is increase in sales, increase in market, increase in innovation, creativity. So there are executives throughout the organization that would focus on one of those. So if I were to focus on marketing, for example, the marketing vice president might have a passion about increasing marketing revenue or share within the market. And so I would approach him terms of one way to do that is by equipping your leaders with the capability of developing the skills that employees need in order to increase market share. Sometimes it's as simple as leaving a legacy. You know, some of our senior executives have been around for a long time. Would it not be the greatest thing for the company and for your legacy to institute a leadership program that instills in our leaders the values and the skills and the capabilities that you would want the organization? So you make it kind of a, yeah, this was left by Mr. Senior Leader, so kind of appealing to their ego. Others? How do you get senior leader buy-in?
Hi, I'm from HSBC, and most of our initiatives pretty much is championed by one of the leaders. So it pretty much becomes part of the KRA.
Yeah.
So whenever there's a review or any global presentation, they are the ones who are pitching, and it's not us. So it kind of helps drive that initiative far much more stronger.
Sure.
And the rigor is really great because they are the ones who are leading it.
Yep.
So they are the ones who are responsible for it if it fails or if it's successful.
Yep.
So that really helps.
And I think one of the other things to build off of that, thank you for sharing that, is that we have to make it easy for our executive to support it. So what does support actually look like? It means perhaps you show up at the kickoff dinner, and pretty much that's it. Or maybe we write an announcement that you send out through your office that supports the program. Or maybe you create a video that we feature at the beginning of each one of our kickoff sessions. Or maybe, so we make it as easy as possible for them to take on this sponsorship. I think that's a big part of it. Thank you.